I watched that Schaffrillas video back when it came out, the most viewed Netflix originals one, and my interest was piqued at some of his rationale for why he thinks that K-pop Demon Hunters is overrated. And this kind of ties into why I decided a while back that a tier list structure was a better way of ranking media on my channel than number scores. I mean, I never liked number scores in the first place, but I thought that having number scores would be more populous than having no metric way of viewing things. But the argument that K-pop Demon Hunters is not that great of a movie to watch, that it has like this archetypal plot, uncompelling hetero romance sidelining the other characters, and that the arc of the events is flawed, the climax is underwhelming, some of the songs within the context of the narrative are forced and trying to validate these forced emotional beats into the story. All of that stuff is true. Look, all of that, every criticism that Shafe has of the film, no notes, 200% true. My perspective on this is a film is, more than the film. It definitionally has to be more than just the footage that plays over the runtime of the film. To be art, quote unquote, big air quotes art, to warrant something to think back on and think and how they feel about their memory of watching it, not the act of watching it, but the memory of watching that lingers or that is conversed about, the way they feel about it, and also how to write about it for a reviewer, whatever, that has to be definitionally more than what the film literally physically is. So Shafe says that K-pop Demon Hunters, the brand, is better than K-pop Demon Hunters, the movie. And again, I completely agree with this. This is borderline my exact words for how I would describe it. But is that not like an artistic consideration for the film or the product of K-pop Demon Hunter, whatever you consider to be the limitations of its reach as a medium of art? If I review the movie, how could I not review the brand as a byproduct or an extension of the movie? I mean, like, brand itself, brand, content, product, etc. These are all kind of ugly consumeristic terms that, we don't like. And it makes me think of like the K-pop Demon Hunters, the McDonald's kids special that I see while driving down a streetway. But the idea of the universe and of the entity and of the energy and the vibe, clearly these feelings exist in the mind beyond just sitting down on a couch and watching the movie with its flaws. I would say that the majority of people's engagement with K-pop Demon Hunters at this point in time was experienced well outside of watching the film. In my opinion, when you think about art, all of us like autistic, thespian, wannabe assholes, we all agree, we're all in some form of agreement that we want to see art as kind of spiritual, as something that touches humanity in more than just an entertainment, fire your fucking neurons, use your brain chemicals to pass the time. So if we view art as something human, there's a lot of changes that we would have to make in considering what art is or can be or should be. And art is the thing that, like, art is whatever it is, the actual material product of it, but art would also be the memory of that, and it would be the emotions and the experiences of perceiving of it and thinking about it and talking about it with other human beings. Art is dynamic. It definitionally has to be. How we appreciate and how we understand art changes over time, even though the material reality of the art is completely stagnant. Art has infinite capacity for depth and nuance so long as there are still people willing to go back and consider it. So art has meaning in how it bounces off of you and your life and your mind and your emotions, and it has meaning in culture. If art is meant to reflect anything meaningful about humanity, then it is a living thing that exists in the people who are considering it and in the culture that shapes it and is shaped by it. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect about applying this universally, applying this concept, you know? I have contrarian impulses. Like, oh my god, you guys only like what you imagine this thing to be. You only like your idea of this thing, but the actual media itself, if you just look at it, it's clearly mediocre. Idiots. Fucking. And I feel like this contrarian impulse comes from a desire to elevate individuals, to see reviewing the art not as an earnest attempt to invite that art into your life to shape and be shaped by it, but instead as this like modern kind of sports betting thing that everyone engages with art now, where you argue on which thing is the best and which creator of which thing is the best. Of course, I also understand that a rejection of critical standards can and often does lead to a kind of, oh, just let people enjoy things, reductive mentality, where people become even less artistically minded, artfully minded, and they just shovel the entertainment slop into their mouths and make no attempt to enlighten or become enlightened by it. No attempt at growth or renewed understanding of anything. And that is a much harder topic to grapple with, you know? Nobody really has a grasp on how to get people to watch good things and think more deeply and richly about the things that they do, both in the arts and in actual real fucking life. So what I am confident in, contrary to all that, what I am confident in is that I am far more mentally and emotionally fascinated by how K-pop Demon Hunters can conjure this cultural power, the cultural moment. How it can produce such a strong impulse that makes you want to love the quote-unquote brand, want to root for it and celebrate it, especially when so many aspects of the film itself are quite observably mediocre. I just feel like there's a far more powerful art at play in pulling off such a magic trick than would have been accomplished by a film with fewer flaws, but that inspired less passion in the viewer and in the culture. After all, it's not like the passion that people have for the idea of K-pop Demon Hunters or the cultural force that it represents, it's not like those are accidents. It's not like they're just completely circumstantial to what the film is, you know? Think of something like this. Makes me think of Sound of Freedom as like a recent example. A completely unremarkable, mediocre film that studios did not know what to do with until these like evangelical marketing savants picked it up and strategically turned it into a cultural symbol using methods that are almost in which almost all of the meaning and power and success of their marketing strategy was derived irrespective of what the film was actually like to fucking watch. Even then, I am sympathetic to and curious about an argument for that also being a form of art. Now, I don't like that idea, obviously, but could a film be art almost entirely because of how people delusionally agree to imagine it to be? Like, willful delusion about what it supposedly represents? Does art, like symbols, do artistic symbols have power entirely based on this arbitrary faith placed on them through psychological and cultural forces or biases? Is art that serves like an evil, shitty purpose still art in the same way that we want to seek out arts that we feel are meaningful and uplifting, just because the art is wielding power in a similar way? Or is it kind of like is it like the stock market where the investments that people make on the name of a company, on the specific stock itself, in the modern day have almost no relationship to the real mechanics and the real profitability of that company, to the point that they're basically not even referring to the same thing anymore. It's just it's all gambling and marketing. I don't know how to answer these kind of pretentious bullshit questions. I'm just saying that I think K-pop Demon Hunters has this spiritual energy that I love and that I think is powerful, which is not accurately reflected if you were to just do the technical, oh, there's flaws in its storytelling, oh, there's flaws in its pacing. And I also feel strongly that art exists more in memory and culture and the idea of the thing more, to a significant degree. I think it exists in those things more than in the relatively small number of hours you would spend actively consuming that thing in your life. Like, out of my favorite arts of all time, let's take my favorite movie, American movie. I've maybe spent like a total 10 to 12 hours of my life actually watching it, watching the film in its intended, sit down, watch the whole start and finish. But obviously, this film has occupied way more of my life than just 10 hours, right? And I will continue to consider this film in the future anytime that I am prompted to, anytime that something reminds me of it, anytime that I consider its meaning or its execution of its ideas. So basically, I don't know. I mean, who gives a fuck if the movie is like, kind of whack? Are you gonna be? We're gonna be golden, you fucking losers, you fucking chuds. As a final note, I am also struck with the impression, and maybe this is just a inaccurate generalization, but is that not appropriate for a pop music film? Like, it's in the title. It's pop music, and pop music is often, even like as far as I've seen academically, characterized as like these infectiously catchy melodies that thematically reflect these broadly applicable, raw, blunt emotional appeals. A pop song is supposed to reflect a feeling so broad that it seems to have application far beyond its own limited use case within the song. Like, I think the stupid fucking, like, the hetero song in the middle of the movie, Free Guy, or whatever it's called, that song, the context within the film is, like, funny, it's laughable. But if you take the context away, and you just think of it as a pop song that has a broad emotional landscape that you could apply to anything, I think the song itself becomes much stronger. And pop music is just like that. It naturally rejects its own context. And I think it's kind of ironic, I don't know, beautiful that the film basically does the same thing. Like, it's not a movie about this plot where, three, like, warriors fight demons, there's too much guy slop, liar reveal, whatever. It's a film about serving cunt harder than it's ever been served before. So, anyways, that's my perspective, at least. That's about it. See ya.